Imagine a single bomb, powerful enough to wipe out an entire city in seconds. An invention that didn't just end a war, but started an era that could end humanity itself. A creation that has already taken hundreds of thousands of lives and still threatens millions more. This is the untold story of the world's first nuclear weapon, the Manhattan Project. And once you understand what really happened, you'll realize this isn't just history, it's a warning.
We have spent more than $2 billion on the greatest scientific gamble in history.
America is the only country on this planet that has the A-bomb.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
In the late 1930s, as the dark clouds of fascism gathered over Europe, a seismic shift hit the scientific world. Back in 1934, Italian physicist Enrico Fermi had already begun experimenting with neutron bombardment, taking the first steps toward understanding atomic reactions. But the real breakthrough came in December 1938 in Germany. Scientists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann successfully discovered nuclear fission, a phenomenon that would soon change the course of human history. Physicist Lisa Meitner provided the theoretical explanation. When you bombard a heavy nucleus, like uranium-235 with neutrons, it doesn't just dent, it splits. This split releases a staggering, almost terrifying amount of energy. The confirmation that a uranium atom could be split was more than just a scientific achievement. It proved that the immense energy hidden within the atom could actually be released. When Hungarian physicist Leo Szilard heard about this discovery, he was stunned. He immediately realized something far more significant and far more dangerous. If this reaction could be controlled and sustained as a chain reaction, it could lead to the creation of an extremely powerful bomb. But at that exact moment in history, Germany was under the rule of Adolf Hitler. By 1938, the persecution of Jewish people in Germany had intensified dramatically. As a result, many Jewish scientists were forced to flee the country, migrating to the United States and other parts of Europe. Then, in 1939, World War II began. Germany quickly emerged as the driving force behind the war, and within a short span of time, Hitler's forces occupied most of Europe. The atrocities that had once been limited to Germany were now spreading across all of Nazi-occupied Europe. This forced even more Jewish scientists, including those who had previously taken refuge in other European countries, to flee once again, this time heading toward the United States. Meanwhile, in a Berlin lab, the very place fission was discovered, the Nazis launched the Uranium Club, their goal to build an atomic bomb first. As news of nuclear fission spread across the global scientific community, especially among scientists who had escaped Nazi Germany, a deep sense of fear began to grow. Brilliant minds like Leo Szilard, Eugene Wigner, and Albert Einstein became increasingly concerned. If Nazi Germany succeeded in building an atomic bomb before anyone else, the future of the world could be plunged into darkness. Driven by this fear, a crucial step was taken. On August 2nd, 1939, a historic letter, now known as the Einstein-Szilard Letter, was sent to U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The letter warned that Nazi Germany might already be working on nuclear weapons. It urged the United States to act quickly to secure uranium supplies and begin its own nuclear research program before it was too late. At that time, however, the Second World War was still largely confined to Europe. The United States had not yet entered the conflict. Because of this, the warning did not receive immediate attention. But by 1940, the global situation had begun to change rapidly. On one side, Hitler's Germany continued expanding across Europe. On the other, Japan was aggressively advancing through Southeast Asia. The threat was no longer distant, it was becoming global. Gradually, the United States began to take the warning more seriously. President Roosevelt formed the Uranium Committee, tasking scientists with gathering uranium and researching its potential. But there was a problem. The committee had just $6,000 in funding, and uranium, the key ingredient, was rare and incredibly difficult to obtain. At the time, the richest uranium deposits in the world were located in the Congo, then a Belgian colony. But in 1940, Germany invaded and occupied Belgium. This created a serious risk. A Belgian mining executive named Edgar Sengier, who was the director of the Shinkolobwe uranium mine in the Congo, sensed the danger that Nazi Germany might seize control of this valuable resource. Acting on this fear, he secretly shipped 1,250 250 tons of high-grade uranium to a warehouse in New York City, a decision that would later change the course of history. Meanwhile, Britain and Canada launched their own nuclear program, tube alloys. But everything shifted on December 7th, 1941. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and the United States officially entered World War II. Now America realized something alarming. It was years behind Nazi Germany in nuclear research. President Roosevelt immediately accelerated efforts. He ordered American scientists along with refugee scientists from Europe to immediately begin work on nuclear weapons. The US government quietly acquired the 1,250 tons of uranium that had been secretly shipped to New York from the Congo. By early 1942, experiments to develop atomic weapons had begun across the United States. But there was a major problem. Research was scattered across nearly 30 different locations, with scientists working in isolation. This made the process not only inefficient, but also extremely dangerous. They needed one centralized, top-secret location. And so, on August 13th, 1942, the United States launched one of the most secretive and ambitious projects in history, the Manhattan Project. The name itself was intentionally misleading, chosen to keep the true nature of the project hidden from the public. The project was placed under the command of U.S. Army General Leslie Groves. Groves was known for his strict discipline, strong personality, and relentless determination to achieve results, no matter the cost. Now came the question, who would lead the scientific side of this mission? The answer was J. Robert Oppenheimer. At the time, Oppenheimer's selection surprised many. He had never managed a large-scale laboratory, but Groves saw something in him, a brilliant mind capable of uniting the greatest geniuses on the planet. Oppenheimer was a leading figure in nuclear physics, with deep theoretical understanding and a strong academic background. He was also American-born, something that mattered to Groves. Under Groves and Oppenheimer, the Manhattan Project began assembling some of the greatest scientific minds in history, a team that included figures like Enrico Fermi, Edward Teller, and Leo Szilard. The project was so massive, they had to build 3 secret cities. This was the factory for uranium enrichment. Since natural uranium is 99.3% unusable, U-238, they had to painstakingly extract the 0.7% of fissile U-235. Hanford was selected for producing plutonium. Unlike uranium, plutonium does not occur naturally. It had to be created inside nuclear reactors by bombarding uranium-238 with neutrons. The B reactor built here became the world's first full-scale plutonium production reactor. Los Alamos was the intellectual center of the entire project. Located in the remote mountains of New Mexico, this secret laboratory was where the actual bomb design and assembly took place. On December 2nd, 1942, beneath a football stadium at the University of Chicago, Enrico Fermi achieved the first controlled nuclear chain reaction. This was the moment everything changed. Right after the experiment, Leo Szilard shook hands with Fermi and reportedly said, "This will go down as a black day in the history of mankind." And he wasn't wrong. This breakthrough guaranteed the creation of the atomic bomb and birthed the nuclear age, a period many now view as a curse. So what exactly is a nuclear chain reaction? It's when a neutron hits an atom, causing it to split and release energy along with more neutrons. Those neutrons then go on to strike other atoms, triggering a rapid, self-sustaining chain, releasing massive amounts of energy until the fuel is finally exhausted. What began with roughly 100 people at Los Alamos quickly exploded in scale. The site soon housed thousands, including scientists and U.S. Army personnel. Interestingly, most of the workforce had no idea they were building a weapon of mass destruction. While America pushed forward with the Manhattan Project, Nazi Germany was working on the Uranium Club, and Britain and Canada were collaborating on tube alloys. However, by 1943, heavy German bombing threatened the British project. To protect their progress, President Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill signed the Quebec Agreement. This pact integrated the tube alloys team into the Manhattan Project, relocating the world's brightest minds to the US. They worked on 3 designs: Little Boy, a uranium-based gun-type bomb; Thin Man, a plutonium-based gun-type bomb. Fat Man, a plutonium implosion-type bomb. The Little Boy design was relatively simple. It involved just firing one piece of uranium 235 into another, creating a supercritical mass and triggering an explosion. Initially, scientists believed this gun-type method could work for both uranium and plutonium. But in 1944, a major problem emerged. Scientist Emilio Segre discovered that reactor-produced plutonium contained an isotope called plutonium-240, which caused spontaneous fission. This meant that a gun-type plutonium bomb would detonate prematurely, failing before achieving a proper explosion. This failure scenario was known as a fizzle. As a result, the Thin Man design was abandoned. Scientists were forced to develop a completely new approach. The solution was implosion. John von Neumann and George Kistiakowsky designed explosive lenses to compress a hollow plutonium sphere inward with such force it became supercritical. This became Fat Man. Meanwhile, Oak Ridge continued producing enriched uranium for Little Boy, while Hanford supplied plutonium for Fat Man. But before America could even finalize its first functional bomb, the world outside the lab changed. On April the 12th, 1945, President Roosevelt died. Vice President Harry S. Truman became the new president of the United States. At that point, Truman knew very little about the Manhattan Project, but he was quickly briefed. Just weeks later, on April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler committed suicide, leading to Nazi Germany's surrender in May. After that, the United States had completed both of its bomb designs. Now, all that remained was the test. The Little Boy bomb was considered simple enough that scientists were confident it would work without testing. And because enriching uranium-235 was so difficult, it was never detonated experimentally. The Fat Man, on the other hand, was highly complex. Using it without testing would have been extremely risky. Years of effort, billions of dollars, could fail in an instant. Oppenheimer understood this. There was only one option left. They had to test it. The test was given a codename, Trinity, inspired by a poem by John Donne. As the test date approached, anxiety grew among scientists. Physicist Edward Teller even feared that the explosion might ignite the Earth's atmosphere, potentially destroying the entire planet. Finally, the day arrived, July 16, 1945. In the remote desert of Jornada del Muerto, near Socorro, New Mexico, the world stood on the edge of something unimaginable. Scientists prepared to test an implosion-type nuclear bomb powered by a plutonium core, known simply as the Gadget. It was placed atop a 100-foot steel tower, waiting in silence. But the desert had other plans. The night before the test, heavy winds and rain swept through the area, forcing a delay. What was scheduled for 4 a.m. was pushed to 5:29 a.m. Scientists, soldiers, and technicians gathered nearly 9 kilometers away, wearing protective goggles. But there were serious concerns. If the bomb failed to detonate, the valuable plutonium could be lost. To prevent this, a massive steel containment vessel called Jumbo was built, weighing over 200 tons, but in the end, it was never used. Then, at exactly 5:29 a.m., the desert lit up. The explosion released energy equivalent to 21 kilotons of TNT. The tower vanished, completely vaporized. The desert sand fused into a strange green glass, later known as trinitite. The flash was so intense it was seen from over 160 miles away. The shockwave was heard as far as 200 miles. A massive fireball touched the ground, while a mushroom cloud climbed over 38,000 feet into the sky. Oppenheimer later described the moment as a light brighter than 1,000 suns. In that instant, a line from the Bhagavad Gita came to his mind.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Test director Kenneth Bainbridge reportedly remarked, "Now we are all sons of bitches." Humanity had unlocked a force once imagined only in the hands of gods. The success of Trinity gave President Harry S. Truman a powerful advantage at the Potsdam Conference, but the story didn't end there. Radioactive fallout from the test spread across nearby communities. The local residents, later known as downwinders, suffered serious long-term health effects. For decades, the US government kept this hidden. The atomic bomb wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. It was a massive industrial effort, employing nearly 130,000 people. It cost on about $2.2 billion at the time, equivalent to roughly $30 to $50 billion today. And behind it all, there was also a human cost, with at least 24 lives lost. After the success of the Manhattan Project, the United States made a critical decision. In August 1945, it used atomic weapons to force Japan's surrender. On August 6th, the B-29 Enola Gay dropped Little Boy, on Hiroshima, killing around 78,000 instantly, with over 140,000 dead by year's end. 3 days later, Boxcar dropped Fat Man on Nagasaki, killing tens of thousands more. Faced with unimaginable devastation, Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945, ending World War II. But the destruction didn't stop with the explosions. The aftermath was far more horrifying. Those who died instantly were, in a tragic sense, the lucky ones. The survivors, known as hibakusha, endured unimaginable suffering. Radiation sickness began to take hold, causing severe health decline. Even unborn children were affected, with many born with serious developmental conditions. Now pause and think. All of this destruction was caused by just 2 bombs. Today, the world holds more than 12,000 nuclear weapons, many far more powerful. A nuclear war today would be beyond imagination. Just thinking about it is terrifying. This wasn't just the end of a war. It was the beginning of a new and dangerous era. That is the dark history of the world's first nuclear weapon, one that became humanity's greatest threat. But why did the US choose Japan as its target in the first place? To find out, hit that subscribe button. I'll cover that in the next video.